going to talk about Klons and the perception of the market. So Klons go for $6,000 because there's collectors. It is what it is. Next segment, Klons versus Klones. So I have actually had the luxury of meeting two people in my playing travels that have either owned Klons, currently own a Klon, or multiple Klons. In fact, one of the people I knew had two of them, a gold and a silver one. Silver, no horsey. So gold, silver, no horsey.
Right.
And they had a very interesting opinion, and they were sitting on them. Their investments for the guy that had two of them. I ran into him at an open mic a long time ago, and we had I'd actually almost forgotten about it until I was looking at Klons the other day as a result of my Sweetwater excursion. But he had told me, he said, I have two Klons at home. I have a gold and a silver, no horsey, and he said they are great pedals. I bought them new, and he said I was tipped off the I guess the silver one. He says towards the end of the production of the original Klon. He said I bought that because I was told they were going to stop making them by Bill Finnegan. So he had one of the last ones, and according to him, he said the Klons are great. He's like, but the problem is they're kind of magic fairy dust thing that are not reproducible. And he's like, so everybody put them in the hands of people like Brian Wampler and Josh Scott, who reverse engineered them all to hell, figured out what was wrong with the circuit, and made them better. And actually, the night I saw him, he didn't have a Klon on his board. He had a Tumnus, actually. And I think it was a Tumnus. I don't think it was like the JHS one or anything like that.
Or the Archer.
I believe it was a Tumnus. And he was telling me, he's like, I prefer this one. I was like, I've got this. And he had a couple other clones, including the Soul Food, right? He had a JHS modded Soul Food, apparently. And I actually wanted to reach out to him, see if I could get him on the show, but I don't have his contact info. So I'm talking to some people. So it would be an interesting conversation. But basically, the Klon is a Klon, right? But once you get into the clone thing, like, what is a Klon? And it's a derivative circuit, so it's the same thing. It's like same conversation you had about tube screamers. Is like, when does it stop being a tube screamer? When is a Klon a clone? And ultimately, I sort of think like the prices should sort of fit that idea. Like, once somebody comes out with a pedal that has, more control and can get those same sounds, which, by the way, that flanger thing was a perfect example. And I had a conversation with somebody who actually owns the same flanger, the same Japanese Boss flanger, and had a different opinion about it compared to the current flanger. And I held my ground because I'll be honest with you, I heard them both in the same room, played by the same person, plugged in the same chain, and we tweaked them. They weren't the same knob positions, but we could get them to sound identical. You could not have told them apart. There's no way in hell. No way in hell. I don't care if you're Chris Lord Algae. You're not going to be telling them apart because they were that damn close. And maybe like in a situation where you have the knobs, tweaked the same way. No, they're not going to sound the same because Boss made improvements in their mind going into the digital one. So my point is with the Klon, people definitely have this interpretation that it's about having like knob positions, same thing. It's like, that's not it. Can it do the same sounds? And if it can, and I'm not saying that that's necessarily what the case for this stuff is, but if you can do that and beyond, then okay, this is where I ask you, why the hell would you want a Klon at $6,000 or $4,000 or whatever it is they're going for today? Because they change hourly. And that's another thing. How many Klons were made? Because they're just like trading like stock. I mean, I swear to God, if you watch, I'm willing to bet you've seen some guy has owned the same Klon twice and not realized it. I mean, because there ain't that many of them. These people act like there's like thousands and thousands and like they can collect hundreds of them. There's probably a couple hundred gold ones. I can't imagine the numbers are like stratospheric on this pedal. So, yes, demand, right? Obviously, there's a demand for this. Is the demand a player's demand? I don't know many people who are buying the Klon to play it these days. There are people that do. Philip Stacey uses a Klon. Jeff Beck, I think, was using a Klon. I'm not sure if he's using it now. He probably is. But for people in those kinds of circles, they can use whatever the hell they want. It's not, right. I mean, that's not even an issue for them. For people like you and I to buy a Klon and take it on stage, when was the last time you saw somebody locally with a Klon on stage?
Almost 20 years ago. No, 10 years ago.
Yeah, because if you took it out now, you'd be worried somebody's going to walk off with your $3,000 overdrive.
Yeah, it was 10 or more years ago. So I was in a band called Rockslide, and my friend, who has sold it, so I can name him, his name is Bob. Bob had a Klon on his board, and he had a switching system built by one of those really
Bob Bradshaw.
Bradshaw. He had a Bradshaw switching system.
Okay.
And so his board looked like, here comes the Star Trek Enterprise, a gauge type thing. It was really cool, really nice, really a lot of stuff, and a really high-end stuff. And what was funny is he had a Klon, and he had like these really expensive pedals that I couldn't even at that time I didn't really know pedals.
What was he running? What was he running amp-wise? Just out of curiosity.
In practice, he was using an Egnator.
Okay. Before the cheapo Egnators showed up. Yeah.
Yes. The early Egnators.
Yeah, back when they had a reputation for being decent.
Right.
Before the Rebel and all that crap.
Right. He had the old Egnator. And he had which was a head cabinet. But he also ran another head. And I'm trying to remember exactly which one it was, but it was one of those like
a Bogner or something like that.
Yeah, really, or Soldano.
Yeah.
One of the other high-end ones that he used.
And that makes sense, because those are Marshall-style circuits, and I typically see people favoring Klons in those kinds of applications. Typically.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so what I'm saying is he also made the thing to me. He said to me, I'd just get a Tumnus Deluxe. He goes, and I've still got, at that time he still had his Klon. He goes, I'd just get a Tumnus. And then I saw the Anderton thing where they showed a Tumnus. I saw a lot of different things where they recommended Tumnus for the guitars that I had. And so I was like, well, you know what? Because I asked Bob first. I said, because like you, he knows the stuff. And
you want to ask somebody who actually has experience with it, not some idiot on a forum who's seen one.
That's right. Who has Paul or Les Pauls? Who knows that he's running it into a Marshall circuit, and what does he recommend? And he's got the gold Klon. He's got an original gold Klon.
Yes, one of the earlier
at that
ones.
time in the collection. So, and he got good money for it.
Oh,
he got enough to buy a car for his kid. I mean, that bought a car.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, with which obviously had the horsey on it.
Yeah, because I think the Golds all had the horsey.
Yeah, I don't know, because I don't know Klons well enough. All I know is he told me which one to get, and I just like I respect your opinion, I respect his opinion, and I went with the Tumnus, and I don't feel like I was let down.
I don't have an opinion, but I think it's interesting that people do who don't own them.
Who never owned a Klon, exactly.
Who are also the ones driving the prices up. I mean...
Yeah, and then they buy it, and they don't put it on their pedal board, because
it goes into a vault, because you could never take that to a gig. I mean, what if somebody spilled beer on your Klon?
What if let me say this. Let me be the devil's advocate here. Now, most people, if they have a 6,000, like Bob did, Bob had a real rack unit and a real good gear. And his pedal board, like I said, he had that Bob Bradshaw.
It's like his pedal board was basically like a drawer, you know? Like,
Right. It was literally like he brought that out. It was this wide and this big. That thing was huge.
Yeah.
Okay, we're talking people who are listening.
Did he just have the controller?
Close to 3
He just
feet
had a
wide.
controller unit on the floor then, and he had like a rack with all the stuff in it.
He had all this stuff, and he had
Right.
some of the pedals were on the floor, and some of the stuff was in the rack.
So anything that had to be controlled was on the floor, like where you need access to knobs, right? Okay.
And he still does that, by the way. He records, he does studio stuff and things. So, anyway, so he has all this stuff. So he was using it, but there's one key piece of equipment he had that would allow you to have all this expensive gear. You know what it was? We've talked about it before. Guess. One key piece of equipment. You got all this expensive stuff. You're running it on the power that comes from the bar. What have you got in between?
Power conditioner.
That's right. He had a really good power conditioner. Just saying.
You
Everything
have
was
to with those rack
power.
units. The old rack stuff, like you had to have pristine power and that's where.
Oh yeah.
So if you don't, is it just as an aside? If you don't remember when the first digital amps hit the market, like the Line 6 stuff, people used to flip their shit about, gotta have clean power, gotta have clean power, gotta have... That was because those people's experience with that equipment was based on prior rack experience, where you didn't build a rack without a power conditioner, a Furman high-end power conditioner, because if you did, you were gonna have problems.
Right.
And that's because these venues, like if you've ever run a multimeter at a venue, which I have, years and years ago when I used to play this little place called 602 North, we were joking around about their power being bad because my amp, a Line 6 at the time, was buzzing really bad. And we actually read the power from the wall, and I could see the voltage dip. And I was like, oh, I'll be damned. Like, and then I was told to not plug things into the wall sockets that weren't plugs. But
wow.
I had my probes in there, which I told them. I said I didn't want to plug my amp into bad power, so I test the outlet. And they were like, well, you shouldn't have to do that. Our power's fine. It was like, you're gonna blow something up or short something. I was a 16-year-old kid or 17-year-old kid. Like, they were looking at me going, this kid's gonna hurt himself or burn down the place or something. But I knew what I was doing, so it's worth mentioning. But that's the thing that happened, and I have heard stories about amps sounding different in different venues because they're not getting the proper voltage and that kind of stuff. Quite a bit over the years. I don't know how much of it's true, but I can imagine some of the places I've played, it looks like beer was spilled in the outlet, kind of thing. They're probably not giving you good power. That's almost guaranteed at that point. So, but in terms of the Klon price and the Klon market and how it all got like out of whack and why we're talking about it on the show even, $6,000 for one pedal. Just keep it in mind, because like, how many guitars can you buy for $6,000? You could buy two Gibson Les Paul standards and really nice hard shell cases for them. You could buy things you could buy with a Klon. That's going to be the name of the segment. Things you could buy with a Klon.
A car for your kid.
You could buy a down payment on a small house. You could buy, a lifetime supply of coffee. Like, the idea that a guitar pedal that has been readily cloned and probably improved upon, that you as a player should be looking at other people using it and thinking, I'm going to buy one. Unless you're rich and you hit the lottery, it ain't worth it. It just isn't. You can't gig with it. Like, that's my whole thing. I could not comfortably put that on a stage. If I took that to an old Stumpy gig, it would get beer in it. Not on it, in it. Okay?